What's up, everybody? This is your boy StephenMotivate, and I'm coming with a polarizing, what do I want to say? Tough, stretching. Um, this is what they tell you not to talk about. Today, we want to talk about politics. It's 2024. It's an election year in the U.S. There was an assassination attempt. A historical event happened just weeks ago. A day ago, the incumbent president has stated he's not running for re-election. It's
The issue with
a lot
President
going on.
Biden isn't if, it's who. Who will replace him?
Running
Because
for president of the United States. And, and I'm very excited about it.
And it's just a crazy time. There's a lot of uncertainty around politics and who to vote for and what will it mean and all that sort of thing. So I want to talk a little bit about the topic because politics really comes from the word policy, right? And there's different policies, rules, regulations as to why and how we operate and how we live, the law of the land, right? Or the policies of the land. And we get so caught up in people that we forget that at the end of the day, you're really not voting for a person. You're really voting for a policy. And I want to make sure or help folks understand the policies that are behind some of the parties, the major parties that represent our country. And I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. I'm going to try to approach this from an academic standpoint. But no doubt there will be a little bit of bias because, as it stands today, I'm not a Republican. I more so relate or connect with Democratic policies. And I'll explain that. This will be a series of videos that we'll go through, and I'll try to explain this and help folks make sense of why that might be the case. And so, but I also want to help you outside of just, understanding things about, my political preferences. I also want to help you understand what are the policies behind the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. What are the policies what are the platforms that these folks that get elected that they're supposed to represent, that they're supposed to stand for, and why folks might be engaged or support these type of groups and how it might connect to their personal agendas and their personal lives. So it'll be a bit academic. It'll be a bit educational, but hopefully it gives you a bit of perspective that we're not just talking about people and personalities. And obviously with such a big personality like former President Trump, and, other big personalities in the past, it's easy to fall in love with the personality. And because of that, we can lose sight of the policies that are connected to these larger groups. So let's talk a little bit today about the Republican Party. And, they recently just had their national convention, and we have seen a lot of things go on. Obviously, there was an assassination attempt. Thank God that the former President Trump was all right and made it through that. There's a lot of conspiracy about, was his security lower than it needed to be? Was it a sham? Are people so crazy as to set up an assassination attempt? I don't think either of those are necessarily true. I don't have all the facts on either of them, but I don't think they're necessarily true. But it's a good time to talk about the Republican Party. They're at the forefront. Several things have happened as it relates to the debate, as it relates to this assassination attempt that makes it very that has kind of made the Republican Party seemingly the party to beat right now. Whereas I think a few months ago it was still a coin toss or toin no coin toss, not toin cost, coin toss as to whether or not the Republicans would win the election or not. It was probably more favored to the Democrats, and there may still be some favor that way, but the reason we should probably dive into this is because, okay, if we do vote Republican, what does that look like in 2024? I also want to jump back to 2016, and I'll get into some of those videos later, but I want to show you how the policies, at least the stated policies, this is their own words, the stuff they're talking about, affects their platform. So that's my preamble. Look, if you like Stephen Motivate videos, if you're learning, if you're getting motivation from our different series, check out Wealthy Thoughts. We've got a new series coming. Check out our Turo tips. Just check out our channel, The Journey. All these things, we hope it helps you as much as it has helped us. So subscribe, like, comment. We will appreciate you joining our community, and there's more cool things to come. The GOP or the Republican Party, it's commonly the GOP. What does that stand for, right? The Grand Old Party apparently is what the GOP is, and it was founded in 1854. It's historic. I'm going to just give you what ChatGPT has. It's historically associated with policies that emphasize free market capitalism. So they believe in free market, strong national defense, deregulation, and conservative social policies. Over the years, these things evolve, but generally they advocate for limited government, intervention in the economy or intervention period, lower taxes, and traditional values, whatever that means. The symbol of the GOP is the elephant, and its color is red. So when you hear people talk about the GOP, it is a nickname for the Republican Party, and it stands for the Grand Old Party. And maybe we'll get into the history more in another video as we kind of walk through a series of these policy or political videos. But what I've done here, and you can do this on your own, you can go actually to the GOP's website, GOP.com. You can look up their platform. In 2020, they didn't make many changes to their platform. It was the same as their 2016 platform. But in 2024, they have actually made changes to their platform. And it's interesting to go over. Now, the folks that have responsible for, I guess, writing up this document or, commissioning its production is that's part of their committee. They have a committee of people that put this together. And then they have local folks around the country or statewide groups around the country. I will say, and I'll give you this information on the Democrats too when I find it, the Republican Party, is mostly, those committee members are mostly male. They're mostly white. There are several females. Those females are mostly white as well. And then there are some folks that seem to maybe have a different background, but the folks that are black, which is who I really want to talk to on these videos, I noticed about 3 black people that are connected with their party at these higher levels. So, and I think they were all males, 3 black males that I saw connected with the Republican Party at that level. And one of the other videos, we'll walk through it and go through it in more detail. But they've got basically 10 chapters or 10 things that they think are important for, America and what their platform stands for. So I'm going to go through one of them today because we don't have a lot of time. But hopefully you'll come back and watch more as you can really learn more about the policies connected to the to this party. So one of their platforms right now is defeat inflation and quickly bring down all prices. Defeat inflation and quickly bring down all prices. Um, so it's funny some of the words they use here. It says that their party will reverse the worst inflation crisis in 4 decades that has crushed the middle class. Um, uh, it's devastated family budgets and it's pushed the dream of home ownership out of the reach of millions. They say they will defeat it. They will tackle the cost of living crisis. They will improve fiscal sanity and restore price stability and quickly bring down prices. All that's really interesting because that language seems a bit overblown. And we get this in politics a lot. It's just kind of like this overblown language of we're going to do this. And you don't really get the details. Well, how are you going to do that? Or are you even responsible for that? Do you even have the authority to do that? But the idea is that, they're going to create some policies that are going to influence those topics. Um, but what I find interesting, and I'll critique here a bit, is that if you remember, a lot of inflation that we see today is a result of a few things. One, there was a lot of money pumped into the economy, and both parties did it. It was a COVID crisis, but it started with the Republican Party because President Donald Trump was the president at the time. So he sent out free checks, put a lot of free money into the economy that hadn't previously been put there. What happened then? Then people had money and they started to spend the money. Okay, so there was stuff that they wanted and they started to buy those things. Well, because so many people had money and there was a lot of people that wanted the same thing, obviously, this is basic economics, that the demand, that's called demand, it started to increase. And when demand increases without an increase in supply, the next thing that happens is prices go up. It goes that way. So if you give a bunch of people a lot of money and they all want the same thing, they all want a piece of cake, the guy who sells the cake now has to say, well, I got a lot of people that want this thing. Only thing I can do is charge a higher price for it to determine who gets it. So it becomes like a bidding war. So that's a simplistic way of describing what's happened, but it's interesting that Republicans are going to defeat inflation when it might be argued, and again, I'm trying to be unbiased, that it was in fact their policies during COVID and even some of the tariff and foreign policy that increase the price of goods. And so, again, it's just an interesting note. But again, you see a policy here, but you also see politics where it's like, oh, let's put the shiny thing in front of people and say, this is the thing that's bothering you, all these crazy prices. Who's responsible for that? Well, the guy that's in charge currently, which happens to be the Democratic Party. Well, we are going to change that. And so if you have a short memory, then you may not remember that prior to this presidency, that a lot of the policies that were put in place were, in fact, initiated by the Republican Party or President Donald Trump at the time. So let me try to be unbiased and defend a little bit of that. Obviously, that was an unprecedented time. There was COVID going on. People were very happy to have money pumped into their hands, and even President Biden also kept the stimulus money going into people's hands. That was first initiated by the Republicans. And so, you can argue a bit that, hey, there was so many things going on that, you don't know who was right or wrong as it relates to that topic, or, who's fully responsible. But if you just use basic, who did it first, sort of kindergarten-like thinking, or what my baby girls would say, well, she did it first, then it is true. In fact, in this short history that we're dealing with, that the Republicans did in fact put in place some activities and policies that rose inflation. However, uh, regardless of that, their first point is to defeat inflation and quickly bring down all prices. So that's something that they're saying they're going to do. Again, I just wanted to point out that I think that's quite interesting. Now, I don't think we have a ton of time, but we're going to try to hit two more of these points because under each chapter, they have additional points as to how they're going to do these sort of things. So number one is they say they're going to unleash American energy. And here's some of the context from their words here. They say under President Trump, the U.S. became the number one producer of oil and natural gas in the world. I don't have time to fact check that right now. And they say we will soon again be that again by lifting restrictions on American energy production and terminating the socialist Green New Deal. Very interesting language, socialist language there. Very, what do we call it? Explosive or hyperbolic language. Exaggerated is probably a more common term, exaggerated language. Republicans will unleash energy production from all sources, including nuclear, to immediately slash inflation and power American homes, cars, and factories with reliable, abundant, and affordable energy. And so this is a key tenet, right? You've seen Democrats talk about clean energy, and you know they sometimes call folks tree huggers or people that are so planet conscious, because are we killing the planet? Are we destroying the planet? So Democrats tend to have that mantra tied to them. While basically what Republicans are saying is a lot of that is unnecessary or it's untimely or we don't believe it at all. And we have, regardless of the cost, we have a lot of energy that can that our country can benefit from. And so that's what they're saying. They're going to unleash the energy. And, I'm trying to be unbiased, but I don't know how much unbiased I'm being, because I will critique where I feel like there's a critique. And hopefully when I read the Democrats' stuff, I'll be able to critique them just as harshly. But, this could be true. They could unleash more energy, at least as it relates to gas and, some drilling of oil and things that would make the supply of oil or energy. Well, there's different forms of energy, but oil is one that can power things. And, you put gas in your car, which, all that's tied to oil. However, there is a cost to that, right? And we've seen that over the years. There's actually a good movie I just watched called There Will Be Blood. And it goes back a long time to the 1800s or late 1800s, and it talks about oil drilling and that sort of thing. And not to completely give it away for you, but the title is fitting. There Will Be Blood, because there is a cost to producing oil, to extracting oil. All these things. That several years ago, you may or may not remember this. BP, British Petroleum, you see it when you get gas, had a huge oil spill and all that sort of thing. And so, and that was a big problem, right? There was a cost to that. And so to give the Democrats some credit, you'd say that oil and some of these nuclear sources of energy are super dangerous. Can we get cleaner energy? Can we get energy that's not as dangerous? And we've seen some of that come to life with air turbines and that sort of thing. And what the Republicans are saying here is that, a lot of that stuff is costing us more than it's helping us. And so you'll see this theme throughout, is that let's go back to a time when it was more free. There's less regulation. Let's I think it's even in this document somewhere, drill, baby, drill. Let's not focus on clean energy. And so depending on what you believe, if you don't really believe that there's an issue with the planet, or that the climate is changing because some of our industries have too many pollutants or do too much damage, then you'd probably align more to the Republicans on this. And so this sort of unleash American energy being a tenet of how they're going to reduce inflation. Again, it doesn't give us direct correlation to how that's going to uh, change the prices or even immediately change the prices. But what it does tell me is that people in the oil industry, people in the nuclear power industry, people that are in natural gas, they would naturally want to be supportive of Republicans because Republicans are saying, we're not going to restrict you. We're going to let you go. And if Democrats are restricting you, they are, what did they say? They are socialist. And this Green New Deal is basically crazy talk. So let's end by looking at the Green New Deal. It's a proposed package of policies in the United States aimed at addressing climate change and economic inequality. This name is inspired by the New Deal, a series of economic and social reforms that Franklin D. Roosevelt did back during the Great Depression. So these are some of the things that are tied to it. Achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions. So this would be transitioning to renewable energy sources and reducing carbon emissions to combat climate change. So Democrats believe there's climate change, so they're going to try to put policies in place to, decrease or create net zero greenhouse gas emissions, and we'll have to dive into what that is. Create high-paying jobs. So they believe that generating millions of jobs in clean energy sector and other sustainable industries will create good jobs for folks. So not only, if you look at the old industries, coal, gas, mining, these industries, they create good jobs too, but they're also really dangerous. There's been a lot of movies, there's been a lot of documentaries around, there's people that have died doing this. There Will Be Blood being one of them. Then there's more about the Green New Deals and investing in infrastructure, stuff that they're talking about with Biden, and then promoting justice and equity, addressing some vulnerable communities that are disproportionately affected by environmental hazards and economic disparities. So this is what I want to highlight on, is because these policies, I'm talking mostly to Black people. And I want Black people, African-American individuals in the United States, to understand what policies make sense for them. So one of the things connected to the Green New Deal is promoting justice and equity, addressing the needs of vulnerable communities disproportionately affected by environmental hazards and economic disparities. So a lot of times the hoods, the ghettos, the places where there's a higher population of Black and brown people or poor people in general, many times these communities will get more of the smog, more of the smoke. So you talk about maybe a airport and all the planes and stuff coming in. If you look around airports, mostly those aren't super rich, fancy communities. Many times those are poor communities around those airports. There's a lot of, stinky smells, a lot of smoke, a lot of pollutants around these communities. There's a lot of, let's go to like a nuclear power plant or a gas power plant. The communities, these are industrial communities, meaning you really don't want to live close to them because that stuff could hurt your body. It could decrease your lifespan. And so why would Democrats push for that? And why would Republicans be less concerned about it? And how does that correlate to Black people? Well, the idea here is that if you go to any industrial city or any industrial area in a city, it's likely going to be on the poorer part of town. It's likely going to be closer to Black folks. And so when people wonder, like, well, why do Black folks just vote Democrat for no reason? Or why don't they connect to Republican policies? Well, when you see someone say they're going to just let industry go and let's drill, baby, drill, and let's do as much as we can as it relates to nuclear power and gas and oil, well, there is going to be an effect of pollutants and hazardous materials, whether it gets in the water or gets in the air, or and no, and that's likely going to affect black and brown people. Likely, you got to do your own research. I'm not going to tell you how to think. Now, I happen to not live in there's a lot of black people that don't live in poor communities. A lot of brown people that don't live in poor. I don't live in a community necessarily, as far as I know, that is directly affected by a certain pollutant or a big power plant or a big industry or anything like that. So it doesn't really affect me. But the reason I connect with that policy is because I grew up right outside of a housing development, a housing authority, right? Which is where you get the Section 8 housing. I grew up in an area where it was across the tracks. There's more industry. There's less grocery stores. There's less things. So I say all that to say is that you have to understand how the policies might end up affecting you. So yeah, it might look good on TV to say, "Oh, this guy looks cool and he has a great personality," but would more energy, just letting the energy do whatever it wants to do, would that benefit me or would that hurt me? And it might depend on where you actually live in the country. So, look, we got to go. Not enough time to dive into everything. That's a couple of things on the Republican policy. Again, their number one tenet, and we'll dive into it more on our next video, is to defeat inflation and quickly bring down all prices. The number one thing they say they're going to do is unleash American energy. You got to think about how that might affect you. Not telling you whether it's good or bad, just asking you to think. All right. Hope that helps you as much as it's helped me. This is your boy, Stephen Motivate. As always, stay motivated. Peace.